Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran, and I like to help people out using a spiritual perspective. So today, guys, I wanted to talk about something that a lot of people, including myself, make the mistake of doing on a spiritual journey or throughout sort of awakening process. Okay, usually at any point during your life, if you relate to this idea of spirituality, you will probably make this a mistake. Okay, and what this is this element of needing to reach a different level, needing to heal, needing to do something in order to get to point B or C or whatever point in your mind, okay, whatever letter corresponds to the next point for you. Always trying to get something else in a spiritual journey, okay? So this is the idea of stop trying to be spiritual and just be. Okay, now this is rooted in the conditioning that we have as humans to constantly seek happiness outside of ourselves and always thinking that the next level will bring us peace or happiness or something that will take us out of whatever we're experiencing now. Okay, so a lot of times what happens is that we get very caught up in labels and very caught up in the ideas about what we should be doing on a spiritual journey and what we should be like. We compare ourselves to maybe other people on YouTube, to maybe some tarot readers, to people that you admire, and you look at their career and what's going on with their life and you think, shouldn't I have that? I'm trying just as hard as they are, if not more. And looking at spiritual people, looking in a spiritual community and thinking to yourself, I don't know if this is the right path. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Should I be becoming a vegan? Should I take up yoga every day? Should I, should you keep doing things the same way? Should you change it? How should you go about changing it? Well, this person is a shaman. Does that mean that I have to go become a shaman? I want to learn my thing. What spiritual career do I need to be? And so there's this constant need for this approval, right? Approval of ourselves, because we go into a spiritual journey, we go into an awakening process, and we believe that there is a linear process, that there is something that we need to go towards and sort of hike up like this mountain, right? And at the top of the mountain is this enlightenment or this ascension, whatever it is to you, okay? And yet constantly we're always seem to be tripping up, falling back down, and the process seems to be more or less sort of like a river, bending and flowing rather than just some point A to point B, okay? And that is essentially rooted in our insecurities around identity, okay? Our right to exist as somebody that is uniquely individual, okay? Because you might have interests that branch out from traditional spirituality. You might not want to start a YouTube channel and talk to other people about their awakening process. You might not want to do tarot readings. You might not want to become a shaman and move to Mexico. You might not want to do a bunch of weird spiritual drugs that people are saying, well, you should try ayahuasca because you'll have some kind of life-changing experience. And you might not want to do those things. And you might be lost because everybody in a spiritual community is talking about doing this and doing that, and they all seem to be doing these weird esoteric spiritual things. Meanwhile, you're just trying to figure out your place on earth. You're just trying to figure out what you might like to do, and maybe you already have an idea about that. Maybe all you ever really wanted to do was sing, and that doesn't seem very spiritual, right? Not in a traditional way. So what happens is that on a journey, spiritual journey, this awakening process, we become very enamored with these labels and ideas of who we think we're supposed to be. Some of us will consider ourselves a star seed or a light worker or a twin flame, and we think that we have to fit into these very narrow-minded bridges, and that we can only cross these bridges. We can only go through this particular point of intersection. We can't go to any other bridge, any other pathway, can't take a boat across the next place. We got to go down this bridge, and we don't like to go down that bridge, and yet we force ourselves to do it. Something that humans do in something that humans do, not because it's innately because we're human, but because that's kind of how society's set up. We're almost always from birth sent down a certain direction, and it's only through adulthood that we resist it. And sometimes that can manifest in a beautiful reawakening of self, such as a spiritual awakening, or it can relate to just sort of changing something about themselves. And other times it just means constant resistance the whole way through and then they're dead, right? So there's these different kinds of life paths that we take, but yet focusing in on the spiritual awakening part of this path that comes into a certain kind of individual's life here on earth is that the biggest thing that we get hung up on is trying to be spiritual, trying to meditate every day, trying to again, trying to do yoga, trying to learn as much as we can, trying to read this book, trying to get this information, trying to try these things. And what will happen is that eventually the months will pass and you will feel just as empty as you did at the beginning. You will have tried all of this shit and you still feel like there's something missing. Okay, now taking examples from my own life, I have I have gone from different country to different place to different ceremonies to different spiritual drugs to regular drugs to meeting these kinds of people about these kinds of things. And the last 2.5 years has just been constantly sort of moving around trying to find a place. And within that process, I believe now looking back that I forgot that it wasn't about trying to become a spiritual individual. It wasn't about trying to become this identity, this label that what would one would think of a spiritual person. It was about understanding myself. Okay, and it being spiritual is not about the ability to talk about esoteric or universal topics. That isn't what being spiritual means. Being spiritual means having a deep rooted connection to your sense of self. Okay, that's what spirituality is. It's a connection to self. And if you have a connection to self, you realize that who you really are is deeper than your human identity. And that can take on many different forms depending on the person's own awakening process, if they're going through a spiritual awakening, if that's something that they resonate with, if that's something that makes sense. But when you think about it from a human perspective, not many people are going through an awakening process. So it seems like those who are awakening are unique and individualistic. And so we become very caught up in that process. And yet, if you take a look at where humanity should or where you would want it to be, or other starseed races throughout the universe, what happens is that everybody in that society would be awakened. So it isn't that unique. It's a normal thing, right? And that's not to say that you definitely aren't unique. It's just to say that your own spiritual process shouldn't be about becoming the most unique person you could possibly be in order to justify your existence here on earth. Okay? It's fine the way that you are just now. And you might not think so, and someone in your life might not think so. Maybe a couple people don't. But you are fine the way that you are, because you can't change everything overnight. You can't become the most ascended version of yourself by tomorrow. You can certainly only try one new thing a day, possibly, and then days you're just going to feel like you can't get out of bed. The goal of your spiritual journey isn't to become somebody that you think you should be as a spiritual person. It's just to become more of yourself. It's to become more kind. It's to have more compassion for yourself, to understand your needs and wants on a deeper intuitive level, and to be able to, yes, quite possibly help other people through a journey, or to take your talents and gifts and show them to the world, to put them on display, to be able to connect to others and maybe do something for humanity, okay, as a whole. Those are definitely some spiritual concepts, but you don't need to constantly validate your own existence by making everything about life spiritual. I've run into many people like this who will tell you that the back pain that you have is because you got unresolved anger issues. Meanwhile, you're thinking to yourself, I'm pretty sure it's because I just came from the gym and I hurt my shoulder because I exercised incorrectly, right? You have those types of people. And those types of people often are the ones who will go out and do all these spiritual medicines and try all this weird things and do the mushrooms, and they'll do the fire dancing and go to Burning Man, and they'll do all of this weird, crazy shit, which there's nothing inherently wrong with. It's just that they'll get lost in the spirituality because they've at some point related themselves to being spiritual. Okay? And it is the same exact thing as when you were in high school, or when I was in high school, and you would see the goth kids or the jocks or the nerds, right? Nothing wrong with being whatever a nerd is into. I don't know what that is, I guess. Video games, computers, Star Wars, I don't know. Or a jock liking sports, nothing wrong with that. And a goth kid, I don't know what they really like. Black, I guess, the color black. But there's nothing wrong with any of those things intrinsically. It's just that those people, in an effort to be very unique, or to identify with something so strong, found a familiar unit and then molded that into their personality, right? Whereas me in my life, I never found this one thing to just make me my personality. Like I never did that. Okay, I like sports. I love the sport of basketball. I like playing it. Um, I enjoy Star Wars. I like video games. I don't own a video game system, but I used to. I like movies. I like food. I like certain kinds of movies, certain kinds of things. I've learned Japanese. I like music and rap, and I like all these other different kinds of things. But my point is, I could go on and on, and I'm not. That's not my point of this video. But the point is that of all the different interests and likes and things that I have taken, I have never made myself a part of them, and I have never made those things a part of me. Right? I've taken what I liked, I've taken what works for me, and I have left the rest. And that is what being spiritual is. That's the truth of yourself. Otherwise, what happens is that you're constantly going to be seeking these outside influences to prove that you are having an awakening process, to prove that you're spiritual, to prove that you're really here. And what happens is that you end up just beating yourself up every time you don't follow that certain path. Because if you do go into that path and at some point you stop resonating with it, or you stop liking it, or maybe there's something that doesn't seem right, almost always you double down thinking that it's your fault, that you're not as enlightened or awakened as you should be, that there's somehow something you're doing wrong with yourself that means that, oh, this is just a test. I need to go even further into it. I need to develop more of these qualities. And it just causes us to constantly need to heal, to go seek healing, to go seek inner child wounds, to go fix ourselves, to go do this, to go do that, all in an effort to try and become enlightened, to try and become awakened, more ascended, whatever that means to you, and just to reach this next level, completely unaware that the level that you're currently at is absolutely fine for you because that's where you are. You're fine where you are. Now, doesn't mean that you shouldn't strive to where you want to be. That's the whole point of being here. Do what you want. If you want more money and you want a better job and you want more like-minded friends, or you want to have sex, or you want to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or you want to meet a high-level soulmate, or you just want to have fun and maybe want to travel, those things are perfect. You should be able to do those things. You should be able to go after those things. But those things have nothing to do with how you see yourself in existence, with who you are. You have a right to be here separate of any of those things. You have a right to be here separate of your friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your parents, your family, your job, your hobbies, your interests. You have a right to be here. You have a right to exist just as much as an animal might have a right to exist because it's here and it's existing. Right? And that's fine. There's nothing that you need to do most of the time. You just need to relax and let go and allow yourself the space and process and patience to not feel like you need to chase some other kind of form of enlightenment. Because what happens is that you inevitably chase those answers away, and they just keep going away from you, right? And you're not able to sort of allow things to come in. So we have this idea throughout childhood that we adopt into our spiritual process, that we think that we constantly have to do something for validation, that we constantly have to achieve and achieve and achieve and achieve, that we see our means of self-worth through productivity and money and job and material, and how much and how fast we're progressing in life and our spiritual journey. Otherwise, we think we suck. Right? I can't tell you how many times I have thought to myself, I should be, I should have more subscribers, or I should have more people commenting, or I should have more likes, or I should be more like this person that I follow or that I like, this spiritual YouTuber, or maybe I should be doing this thing, or how come I don't agree with that, but that person has so many subscribers or followers? Does that mean I'm wrong? You can just lose yourself in all of that nonsense, all of that shit. And the truth is that none of that stuff has anything to do with who you are and what you're feeling right now. Those things you're feeling right now, that's only you. That's only your experience. It's only what you're living through at this moment. So don't strive to become the most spiritual person you can be. Stop trying to find enlightenment. Stop trying to be awakened. Just be, just exist, just be yourself. There's nothing else that matters. Trust me, you don't need to take up a yoga class. You don't need to go do a weird spiritual medicine. You don't need to go to Bali to go find yourself on a weird twin flame retreat. You don't need to do those things. You can do those things, absolutely, but don't do them thinking that if you go to do them, what's going to happen is that you're going to reach a next level. Because I promise you from experience, that almost never happens. That almost never. You become enlightened or you become more awake or more wise during the times in your life where you're not seeking it, where the most mundane things can change your life. Sitting in a park, watching life go by, people watching, sitting in an airport, just watching this life go by, having a coffee with a good friend, or just existing somewhere, and looking at things, maybe reading a book, or maybe you're just chilling out, listening to music, just enjoying the music, and a new song comes on, and it just like the lyrics change your perspective, and you're like, oh shit, I can't believe I've been missing that, right? I just heard a song yesterday that exact situation happened to me. I had some new Tame Impala song. I like the band Tame Impala, and I didn't even know they had an album that came out earlier this year. And one of the songs that I heard yesterday just like really spoke to me, and I forget what it was called now, unfortunately. But the lyrics were basically about kind of the topic that I'm talking about right now. And it's called On the Right Track or On Track or something like that. Good song. If you like that kind of music, check it out. If not, I guess don't. But otherwise, it was basically about being on the right track and just needing, still able to be where they are and still being able to exist and know that you're still headed in the right direction, even though you're not at your final destination. Because you wouldn't say to yourself halfway between Los Angeles and Seattle, somewhere in Oregon, that you were on the wrong track and that you would just stop in a parking lot somewhere and just scream and punch yourself and hate yourself. You wouldn't do that, all right? You would just be like, okay, another day left, or how many hours left, okay? And that's kind of the idea, guys. Don't strive to become awakened. Don't strive to be more spiritual. Don't strive to be any of that shit. Will never, ever give you what you want. Don't strive for anything. Strive to be more of yourself. And the only way to be more of yourself is to find out what you like, find out who you are, find out your interests, find out things like that. Just exist, because everything that you are has already been there. It's already been there. It's been there since birth. It was there before this lifetime. It was there forever and ever. And all the experiences that you've ever had, it's already in you, right? And I'm not saying that you don't need to grow or you don't need to learn or that you won't do those things or that there won't be new interests in things that you like or dislike or things like that. Of course you will. You'll discover all that shit, but you won't discover it by blindly wandering around looking for completion in something outside of yourself. You have the knowledge to do those things, okay? You discover one thing by accident because you're just having a good time, enjoying life. Next thing you know, it puts you on a path, and that path leads to another one, okay? And a small example before I end this video, I'll use music as an example. My whole life, I've always loved music. As a kid, I liked singing. As a preteen, 12, 13 years old, I liked rapping. I remember I used to freestyle with these kids in my class. It was an all-black high school. It doesn't really have too much relevance, but but you can imagine that as the only white kid among a bunch of people who really only listened to rap, I found my groove there as like the only white kid, and it was funny, but it was normal and it was great, and I really enjoyed it, and I had some good friends back then. And then at some point, I just forgot about it, and I think my father is extremely homophobic and just said like a bunch of like singing is gay or whatever. And I think at some point I kind of just turned off the more of my creative side and like stopped trying to pursue things in an open, vulnerable way. And then at 23, 24, I think I was just relaxing, and I remember I had this breakup with a girlfriend that really hurt, and then at one point I discovered something called lo-fi music, right? Just like this chill kind of instrumental ambient type of beats, right? Very, very low, not very heavy, and very relaxing oftentimes. And so I just discovered like this new genre, and I fell in love with it. And then I was like, huh. And then naturally I was like, I wonder if I can make this. And I found like a little program on my phone to make music, and I had like a lo-fi thing, and I started making lo-fi music, and then I just started making other kinds of music, and the next thing you know, I had like different programs, and I was branching out, and then I started singing and rapping and doing all this shit. And it all just started because one day I was just relaxing and some shit came up on a YouTube feed, That was it. It was just like in my recommended or whatever. You know what I mean? Like YouTube's algorithm. And I just listened to lo-fi music for the first time. Never heard it before. And that sparked or re-sparked what I already knew. What I already knew inside of me. What I already liked. I just didn't even know that it was what I wanted to do. So, I mention that because you don't need to go outside and figure all this shit out. I promise you, you can absolutely find what you need just by letting go and existing as you are currently. You don't need to go find a whole bunch of childhood wounds or heal all this shit, because if you do, you'll create a reality in which that is always going to be the case. You're always going to need to heal something. As soon as you say, I'm good enough now, that's when your journey stops, and then you can start living your life. So, when are you going to decide to give yourself a break? When are you going to decide that you're good enough just now? When are you going to be able to give yourself the peace that you need and just enjoy life? Otherwise, life's passing you by because you're constantly needing something to fulfill yourself now because you think you're not enough. So, guys, I promise you that you are. Please take the rest of the day, if you're watching this video, to try and enjoy life and just exist as you are without this need to find something. And I pray that it will bring you peace. I really do. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we will talk soon. Okay, guys, bye-bye for now.